She was just an ordinary woman, living paycheck to paycheck, unnoticed by the world. But one night, when a fire threatened 2 children, she acted without hesitation, saving lives that weren't even hers to save. 3 years later, that act of courage put her in the crosshairs of deadly enemies, and a powerful mafia boss would go to unimaginable lengths, closing streets, deploying armed men, and risking everything to protect her. This is the story of fear, survival, and the high cost of doing what's right, where kindness makes you both a target and worth protecting. The sound of engines woke me at dawn. Not one engine. 10, maybe 12, rumbling low and heavy like thunder trapped under asphalt. I rolled over in bed, squinting at the pale light seeping through my thin curtains. My apartment sat on the 2nd floor of a brick building on Maple Street, where noise was normal. Delivery trucks, garbage collection, arguments echoing from neighboring windows. But this was different. The engines idled in perfect sync, deliberate and waiting. I sat up, heart already beating faster than it should. My hands found the blanket edge and gripped it. Something felt wrong. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. I crossed to the window and pulled the curtain back just enough to see outside. Black vehicles lined both ends of the street. Men in dark suits stood beside them, arms crossed, faces blank. They were not police. They were not soldiers. They were something else entirely. And they had closed my street. I pressed my face closer to the glass. Every car on Maple Street was blocked in. Mrs. Delgado stood on her porch across the way, her bathrobe pulled tight, staring at the nearest vehicle. Old Mr. Park stood frozen halfway to his mailbox. A woman I did not know tried to walk past one of the men and was stopped with a single raised hand. No shouting. No explanation. Just silence and absolute control. My throat went dry. I had exactly $43 in my checking account. My rent was overdue by 9 days. My car had been repossessed 3 weeks ago. I worked 2 cleaning jobs and still couldn't afford groceries half the time. I was nobody. I mattered to no one. So why did it feel like this was about me? I backed away from the window and grabbed my phone. No signal. I tried again. Nothing. They had cut the towers or jammed them somehow. I was trapped. My hands shook as I stared at the blank screen, willing it to come back to life. Outside, more neighbors emerged from their homes, confusion turning to fear on their faces. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside my door. Heavy, measured, purposeful. Froze. A knock came sharp and final. Not a request. Command. I did not move. The knock came again, louder this time, rattling the cheap wood. My hands shook as I crossed the room and turned the lock. The door opened before I could pull it. A man in a black suit filled the doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, face like carved stone. He did not introduce himself. He did not apologize. He simply looked at me the way someone looks at an object that needs to be moved. "Stay inside," he said. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. "Do not leave. Do not call anyone. This will be over when it is over." I opened my mouth to ask why. To demand answers. To say something, anything that might make this make sense. But the look in his eyes stopped me. Cold. Final. Absolute. He stepped back and closed the door. I heard the lock click from the outside. I was a prisoner in my own home. And I still did not know why. My legs gave out and I sank to the floor. Hours passed. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the door. My phone remained useless. The engines outside never stopped. Occasionally, I heard voices shouting from other apartments. Angry demands. Panicked questions. But no one answered them. The silence was worse than any threat. It said, "We do not owe you explanations." Said, "You are powerless here." Around noon, I heard Mrs. Delgado screaming. Her voice cracked with fear as she demanded to know what was happening. A man's voice responded, low and calm. I could not make out the words. But Mrs. Delgado went quiet after that. I pressed my ear to the door and heard nothing but the hum of engines. My stomach growled. I had not eaten since yesterday afternoon. There was half a loaf of bread in my kitchen and 2 eggs. I forced myself to eat one egg and save the rest. I did not know how long this would last. The clock on my wall ticked forward. 1 hour. 3. And still nothing changed. At 3 in the afternoon, another knock came. This time I opened the door immediately. The same man stood there. Behind him in the hallway stood someone else. A man in a gray suit, hands in his pockets, face calm as if he were standing in a museum instead of a sealed-off street. He looked at me the way a surgeon looks at a patient before cutting them open. Calculating. Precise. Focused. Javier Castillo, the man in gray said. My name felt wrong in his mouth, like he had been holding it for a long time. You do not remember me. I shook my head. My throat was too tight to speak. His expression did not change. 3 years ago you stopped a fire on this street. You carried 2 children out of a burning apartment while everyone else ran. One of those children was my nephew. The words hit me like a fist. I remembered the fire, the smoke, the screaming. I remembered pulling those kids through the window because no one else would. But I never knew who they were. I never asked. The man in gray stepped closer. This street is closed because of you. Because someone wants to finish what that fire started. And I will not let that happen. They did not ask if I wanted to leave. They told me I was leaving. Pack what you need, the man in the black suit said. You have 10 minutes. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what Javier Castillo had just told me. Someone wanted to finish what the fire started. Someone wanted me dead. And I had no idea who or why. My hands moved on autopilot. I grabbed a duffel bag from my closet and stuffed clothes inside. Toothbrush. My phone charger. The photograph of my mother that sat on my nightstand. The only jewelry I owned. A silver bracelet my mother gave me before she died. A book I had been reading. I did not own much. Everything I had fit into one bag. When I zipped it closed, the man in black took it from me without a word. Castillo waited in the hallway. His expression had not changed. He looked at me the way someone looks at a problem they have decided to solve. You will be safe, he said. But you will not be free. I wanted to argue, to demand answers, to refuse. But the engines outside were still running. The street was still sealed. And I was still nobody. I followed him down the stairs, each step feeling like walking toward the edge of a cliff. The SUV had tinted windows so dark I could not see through them from the outside. Inside, the leather seats were soft and cold. I sat in the back, my duffel bag at my feet, staring at the back of Castillo's head. He rode in the passenger seat, silent and still. The driver wore sunglasses even though the sun was setting. No one spoke. As we pulled away from Maple Street, I turned to look back. The black vehicles were already moving. Men dismantled barricades. The street was opening again, as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. Everyone on that street would remember this day. They would remember the fear, the confusion, the silence, and they would remember that it was because of me. Guilt sat heavy in my chest. I had not asked for this. I had not wanted to be the reason my neighbors were terrified. But Castillo's words kept echoing in my mind. Someone wants to finish what the fire started. I had saved 2 children. And now someone wanted me dead for it. The car turned onto the highway, and Maple Street disappeared behind me. I watched it vanish in the side mirror until there was nothing left to see. The house was not a house. It was a fortress. High walls. Iron gates that closed behind us with a final, heavy clang. Security cameras on every corner. Guards at the entrance who nodded at Castillo but did not smile. Inside, the floors were marble. The walls were lined with dark wood. Everything was clean, expensive, and cold. A woman in a gray uniform showed me to a room on the 2nd floor. It had a bed bigger than my entire apartment. A private bathroom with towels thicker than any blanket I had ever owned. A window that looked out over a garden I was not allowed to walk in. The woman handed me a small card with numbers written on it. You will stay here, the woman said. Meals are at 7, noon, and 6. Do not leave the property. Do not contact anyone outside. If you need something, press the button by the bed. She pointed to a small panel on the nightstand. Someone will come. She left before I could ask questions. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the door. It had no lock on the inside, only on the outside. This was not safety. This was a cage. And I was the bird trapped inside. That night I could not sleep. I lay in the enormous bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Mrs. Delgado, about Mr. Park, about every person on Maple Street who had been trapped because of me. I had not asked to be protected. I had not asked to be the reason an entire street was shut down. But it had happened anyway. And now those people would live with the memory of armed men and sealed roads and fear that came without warning. I thought about the fire 3 years ago. I remembered the smoke pouring from the second-floor window, the screams of the children inside. I remembered everyone standing in the street, frozen, waiting for the fire department. I remembered thinking that those kids would die if someone did not move. So I moved. I climbed the fire escape. I broke the window, pulled them out. I never thought about it again. I never asked their names. I never wanted credit. But now someone knows. And they wanted me dead for it. The injustice of it burned in my chest. I had done the right thing. And I was being punished for it. Life had never been fair to me. But this felt especially cruel. In the morning, Castillo came to my room. He did not knock. He simply opened the door and walked in as if he owned the space. I sat up in bed, pulling the blanket around me. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the garden. "You were being watched," he said. His voice was calm, factual. "For 6 months. We tracked the surveillance. Cameras on your street. A man following you to work. Another watching your apartment at night. They were building a timeline. Waiting for the right moment." My chest tightened. 6 months. Someone had been watching me for half a year, and I had not known. I thought about all the times I had walked home alone. All the nights I had sat by my window. All the moments I had felt safe when I was not. "Why?" I asked. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. Castillo turned to face me. "The fire was not an accident. It was arson. The target was my sister and her children. You saved them. The people who set that fire believe you saw something. They believe you can identify them. And they will kill you to make sure you never do." I shook my head. I did not see anyone. I was just trying to help. Castillo's expression did not change. "Does not matter what you saw. Matters what they think you saw. And what they think is enough to kill you for." On the 3rd day I met the boy. His name was Mateo. He was 7 years old, with dark hair and eyes that were too old for his face. He sat in the corner of the living room, knees pulled to his chest, staring at nothing. I had come downstairs looking for something to eat. The woman in gray had told me the kitchen was open, but when I walked past the living room, I saw him. He did not look up, did not acknowledge me, just sat there, small and silent and scared. I stopped in the doorway. "Are you okay?" I asked. He flinched. His whole body went rigid, and he pressed himself harder into the corner. I took a step back, hands raised. "I'm sorry. I did not mean to scare you." His eyes flicked to me, then away. He did not speak. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. Then I sat down on the floor, far enough away that he would not feel trapped. I did not say anything. I just sat. And after a while, Mateo's shoulders relaxed. Just a little. But enough. I stayed there for 20 minutes, not moving, not speaking, just being present. And when I finally stood to leave, Mateo watched me go. Over the next few days, I learned Mateo's story. He was Castillo's nephew, one of the children I had pulled from the fire. His mother, Castillo's sister, had died 2 years ago. Not from the fire. From the fear that came after it. She had lived in constant terror, knowing someone wanted her family dead. The stress had destroyed her. And Mateo had watched it all. Now he barely spoke. He did not go to school. He did not play. He just existed, quiet and terrified, inside walls that were supposed to keep him safe. I understood that fear. I had lived my whole life at the bottom of it. The fear of eviction. The fear of hunger. The fear of being forgotten. Mateo's fear was different, but it was still scary. And fear, I had learned, was easier to carry when someone sat with you. So I sat with him. Every day. Sometimes in silence. Sometimes reading aloud from books I found in the library downstairs. And slowly, Mateo began to look at me without flinching. He started sitting closer. Started listening when I read. Started existing instead of just surviving. I did not push him. I just showed up. Every single day. One afternoon Mateo spoke. We were sitting in the library. I was reading a story about a boy who built a treehouse. Mateo sat across from me, drawing on a piece of paper with colored pencils. You saved me, he said. His voice was so quiet I almost missed it. I looked up. He was staring at his drawing, not at me. I remember he continued. You came through the window. You told me to hold on. You carried me down the fire escape. My throat tightened. I did not know what to say. I just did what anyone would do, I said. Mateo shook his head. Well, everyone else was standing in the street. You were the only one who moved. He looked up at me then. His eyes were red, but no tears fell. My mom said you were brave. She said you did not have to help us. But you did anyway. I wanted to tell him I was not brave. That I had just acted without thinking. But the look on his face stopped me. He needed to believe someone had chosen to save him. So I let him believe it. Your mom was right to be grateful, I said. You were worth saving. Mateo smiled. It was small and fragile. But it was real. Castillo found me in the garden that evening. I was not supposed to be there. But I needed air. Needed to feel something other than walls pressing in on me. He stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, watching me. You are good with him, he said. Shrugged. I just sat with him. Castillo was quiet for a moment. Then he said my sister used to sit with him like that. After the fire. She would read to him. Talk to him. Try to make him feel safe. But she could not protect him from her own fear. He paused. She died because she could not stop being afraid. The cancer took her in 6 months. But it was the fear that made her sick. I looked at him. His face was as calm as ever. But something in his voice had cracked. Just barely. I'm sorry, I said. Castillo nodded. Then he said, you did not just save Mateo that night. You saved his sister too. Her name was Sophia. She was 4 years old. She does not remember the fire. But she remembers you carrying her. My chest tightened. I had not known there were 2 children. I had just grabbed whoever I could reach and pulled them out. Where is she now? Asked. Castillo's expression hardened. If somewhere they will never find her. With people who love her. She calls me every Sunday. And every time she asks about the woman who saved her. I never knew what to tell her. Till now. That night Castillo told me the rest. The fire had been set by a rival family. They had wanted to send a message to Castillo, to prove they could reach him through the people he loved. His sister had been targeted because she was visible, because she lived on a normal street in a normal neighborhood, because she refused to hide. The arsonists had expected her to die, but I had interfered, and in doing so I had become a witness, even though I had not seen anyone, even though I had no idea who had set the fire. They believed I could identify them, so they decided I needed to die. For 3 years they had waited, watching, planning, and 6 months ago they had started moving. Castillo had discovered the surveillance by accident. One of his men had noticed a car that did not belong on Maple Street. They traced it back, found the cameras, found the man following me. And Castillo had made a decision. He would close the street, seal it off. Make it impossible for them to reach me. Not because he owed me, but because he refused to let them finish what they started. Because 3 years ago I had saved his family. And now he would save me. No matter the cost. I started seeing the cost of Castillo's protection. It was not just me who was trapped. It was everyone connected to him. His men lived in constant rotation. Sleeping in shifts. Always armed. Always watching. Mateo could not leave the house. could not go to school, could not have friends. And somewhere hidden away, Sophia lived the same half-life. All because someone wanted revenge. And because Castillo had decided that protecting us was worth any price. One evening I found Castillo in his office. The door was open. He sat behind a desk covered in papers, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, controlled. I do not care how many people you have to move. Seal the area. No one gets in. He hung up and looked at me. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. You are hurting people, I said. Castillo's expression did not change. I am protecting people. I shook my head. You closed an entire street. You terrified my neighbors. You are moving people around like chess pieces. That is not protection. That is control. Castillo stood. And control, he said, is the only thing keeping you alive. His voice was hard, final. But I saw something flicker in his eyes. Just for a second. But it was there. The news came 2 days later. Another street had been closed. Not by Castillo. By the people hunting me. They had sealed off a neighborhood on the south side. Trapped families inside. Demanded information about my location. When no one could answer, they had burned 3 houses. No one died. But the message was clear. They would keep escalating until they found me. I sat in the library, staring at the news report on my phone. My hands shook. This was my fault. Not because I had done anything wrong. But because I existed. Because I had saved 2 children. Because someone believed I was a threat. Castillo found me there. He stood in the doorway watching me. This is what they do, he said. They punish the innocent to draw out their target. I looked up at him. Then let me go. Let me turn myself in. Maybe they will stop. Castillo crossed the room and sat down across from me. If you turn yourself in, he said, you will die. And they will not stop. They will keep burning. Keep hurting. 'Cause that is who they are. I wiped my eyes. Then what do we do? Castillo leaned forward. We end them. Before they can hurt anyone else. His voice was cold. Certain. And for the first time I believed him. I made a decision. If Castillo was going to protect me, I would not let him do it by destroying everyone else. I found him in his office that night. He was on the phone again. Always on the phone. Always moving pieces. I waited until he hung up. Then I said, you need to stop closing streets. Stop moving people. Stop punishing entire neighborhoods because of me. Castillo leaned back in his chair. And how do you suggest I protect you? I do not know, I said. But not like this. You are becoming what they are. You are hurting innocent people to make a point. Castillo was quiet for a long time. Then he said, you do not understand how this world works. I do, I said. I have lived my whole life at the bottom of it. I know what it feels like when powerful people decide your life does not matter. And right now you are doing the same thing to those families. You are treating them like they do not matter. Like they are just obstacles in your way. Castillo's jaw tightened. But he did not argue. He just stared at me. And for the first time I saw doubt in his eyes. Real doubt. The kind that changes things. He looked down at his hands. Then back at me. What would you do? He asked. His voice was quieter now. I would find them first. I would stop them without hurting anyone else. I would prove that protection does not have to mean destruction. 2 days later, Castillo made a new plan. No more street closures. No more mass evacuations. Instead, he would target the people hunting me. Directly. Precisely. He would find them before they found me. It was riskier. It meant exposing himself. It meant trusting that his men could move faster than the enemy. But it also meant no more innocent families trapped in their homes. No more burned houses. No more collective punishment. I do not know if it was because of what I said. Or because Castillo had been looking for a reason to change. But something shifted. He stopped treating protection like a siege. And started treating it like a scalpel. The attacks slowed. The enemy realized they could not draw me out by hurting others. So they tried something else. They came for Mateo. The night it happened, I was reading in the library. The alarm went off without warning. Red lights flashed. Sirens blared. And I knew with absolute certainty that everything had just changed. The alarm went off at midnight. I woke to the sound of shouting. Footsteps pounding through the hallways. Gunfire outside. I grabbed my phone and pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering. The door to my room flew open. The man in the black suit stood there, gun drawn. "Stay here," he said. Then he was gone. I did not stay. I ran into the hallway. Found Mateo's room. The door was open. The bed was empty. My blood turned to ice. I ran downstairs. Found Castillo in the foyer. Phone pressed to his ear. His face was stone. "Where is Mateo?" Shouted. Castillo looked at me. "If they tried to take him. They failed. But it was close. Too close." I sank onto the stairs, shaking. This was my fault. All of it. If I had never saved those kids. If I had just stayed in my apartment that night. None of this would be happening. Castillo sat down beside me. "You did not cause this," he said. "They did. And they will pay for it." His voice was cold. Final. And I believed him. Because I had seen what happened when Castillo made promises. He kept them. No matter what it cost. The next morning Castillo called a meeting. Not just with his men. With me. He sat at the head of the table in a conference room I had not known existed. His men surrounded him. I sat at the other end, feeling small and out of place. Castillo looked at me. "You were right," he said. "I have been treating this like a war. Punishing everyone to protect one person. That ends now." He turned to his men. "We go after them directly. No more collateral. No more intimidation. We find them. We end this." One of his men spoke up. "That puts us at risk." Castillo nodded. "No. But it is the right thing to do." He looked at me again. "And she is worth the risk." The room went silent. I did not know what to say. I just nodded. And for the first time since this started, I felt like I mattered. Not because I was important, but because someone had decided I was worth protecting without destroying everyone else. Castillo's men began talking, planning, moving. And I sat there watching, knowing that my life had just been valued in a way it never had been before. It was terrifying. And it was powerful. And I did not know how to feel about it. Took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of careful planning. Of surveillance. Of waiting. And then one night Castillo's men moved. I did not see it happen. I only heard about it afterward. They had found the people hunting me. Cornered them. Ended the threat. No innocent people were hurt. No streets were closed. No houses were burned. Just precise, calculated justice. When Castillo told me it was over, I did not feel relief. I felt exhausted. Like I had been holding my breath for months and finally let it out. "You are free to go," Castillo said. We were standing in the garden. The sun was setting. The air was cool. I looked at him. Where would I go? My apartment is gone. My job is gone. My entire life was on Maple Street. Castillo nodded. "Then stay." Not as a prisoner. As someone who belongs here. I thought about Mateo. About the way he had started smiling again. About the way he called me by name now instead of staring in silence. I thought about the streets that had been closed. The fear I had caused. And the fear that was finally over. "Okay," I said. "I will stay." Castillo held out his hand. Took it. And we shook. Like equals. Like partners. Like people who had survived something together and come out the other side changed. Mateo hugged me the next morning. It was the first time he had ever touched me voluntarily. He wrapped his arms around my waist and pressed his face into my shoulder. "Thank you," he whispered. I knelt down so we were eye to eye. "You do not have to thank me." He shook his head. "Yes, I do. You stayed. Even when you did not have to. Even when it was scary. You stayed." Smiled. "'Cause you are worth it." Mateo smiled back. It was small, fragile, but real. And at that moment, I understood why Castillo had closed the street. Why he had moved heaven and earth to protect me. It was not about debt. It was not about power. It was about refusing to let fear win. It was about choosing to protect someone even when the cost was high, even when it made no sense. Because some people are worth protecting, not because of what they can do for you, but because of who they are. Matteo pulled back and looked at me. Are you going to stay forever? He asked. I do not know about forever, I said. But I am staying for now. And that is enough. Matteo nodded. Then he ran off to play. And I watched him go, feeling something I had not felt in years. Oh, Maple Street never forgot. I went back once months later, just to see it. The buildings looked the same. The cars were different. New people lived in my old apartment. But the memory of that morning remained. Mrs. Delgado saw me from her porch. She did not wave. She just stared. Understood. I was the reason her morning had been shattered. The reason armed men had sealed her street. I could not change that. I could not make her forget. I could only live with it. As I walked away, Mr. Park called my name. Turned. He stood on his lawn, hands in his pockets. I heard what happened, he said. I heard you saved those kids. He nodded. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said thank you. For not letting them die. Smiled. It was small. But it was enough. I left Maple Street and did not look back. Some places you cannot return to. Some memories you cannot erase. But you can move forward. And that is what I did. I walked down the street, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. And I kept walking. 'Cause that is what survivors do. We keep moving. We keep living. We keep choosing tomorrow, even when today was terrible. The legend grew without me. People talked about the Mafia boss who closed a street. Not to conquer it. Not to control it. But to protect one person. They talked about the morning armed men appeared without warning. About the fear. About the silence. And about the woman at the center of it all. The woman who had saved 2 children and paid for it with her freedom. I did not feel like a legend. I felt like someone who had survived. Who had been pulled into a world I did not understand and had somehow found a place in it. Matteo still called me every week. Sophia, who I finally met, sent me drawings. Castillo checked in, always calm, always watching. And I lived. Not in fear. Not in hiding. But in the strange, fragile peace that comes after surviving something you never thought you would. The street was closed. The threat was ended. But the memory remained. And in that memory, I found something I had been searching for my whole life. Proof that I mattered. That my life had weight. That I was worth protecting. Even when it cost everything. I stood in the garden one evening, watching the sunset, and I realized something. I was not the same person who had woken up to engines at dawn. I was not the woman with $43 and no future. I was someone who had been seen, valued, protected. And that changed everything. The legend would continue without me. But I would continue too. And that was enough.